It is good to see you again.
이런 데서 각하를 만나게 될 줄 생각 못
I've
했습니다.
never expected to meet you at this place.
What's the common point between President Trump and the supreme leader, Kim Jong-un? Well, they both hate Obama. July 30th, 2025, the White House Cabinet Room. A South Korean delegation files in bracing for tough trade talks with a re-elected US president. But Donald Trump's first words leave them flummoxed. How is Kim Jong-un doing lately? The South Koreans exchange baffled glances. Here they are, primed to haggle over tariffs and defense costs, and Trump opens by inquiring about the well-being of North Korea's dictator. The question was so unexpected that the visiting officials didn't know how to respond. A South Korean source later mused that this surreal icebreaker perhaps shows President Trump still has a keen interest in Kim Jong-un. In Seoul's halls of power, jaws quietly dropped. It wasn't a one-off gaffe. In fact, Trump had been praising Kim for months. Earlier this year, on March 31st, he cheerfully told reporters,
"Very good relationship with Kim Jong-un." Now, you people hate to hear that, but it's very important. I got along with him fantastically, as you know.
He went so far as to call North Korea a nuclear power and Kim Jong-un a smart person, words no US president before him would dare utter about the leader of a rogue nuclear state. Even when news broke in June that Pyongyang had pointedly refused to accept a personal letter from Trump, the president blithely insisted,
"Well, if there is a conflict, I get along with him very, very well, and we'll get the conflict solved with North Korea. I've had a good relationship with Kim Jong-un."
It was as if the clock had turned back to 2018, as if the flame of their peculiar bromance had never been doused by time or reality. A similar story happens on the other side of the planet. On July 28, 2025, just days before Trump's quirky inquiry about Kim's health, Kim Jong-un's powerful sister, Kim Yo-jong, issued a public statement that stunned longtime Korea watchers. "I do not want to deny the fact that the personal relationship between our nation's leader and the current US president is not bad," she announced. In the dry language of North Korean officialdom, that phrase, "not bad," was high praise. After years of state media calling American leaders dotards or imperialists, Kim Yo-jong's admission of a friendly rapport was nothing short of remarkable. Why did it happen? Did two strongmen simply appreciate each other? Or is there a deeper ledger behind the smiles? To understand what is going on, we must step back to the origin of the Trump-Kim bromance. However, before the show begins, please subscribe to our channel. Without your support, we wouldn't be able to produce these high-quality videos consistently. Okay, now let's begin.
US President Barack Obama has warned North Korea that it will face tougher sanctions if it goes ahead with a planned rocket launch next month. Pyongyang...
Believe it or not, Obama should be blamed for the North Korean nuclear crisis, at least partially.
North Korea will achieve nothing by threats or by provocations. North Korea knows its obligations, and it must take irreversible steps to meet those obligations.
In the 8 years preceding Donald Trump, Barack Obama adopted a North Korea policy dubbed strategic patience. It once sounded reasonable, but turned out to be less a strategy than a polite way of saying, do nothing while hoping for a miracle. When he entered office in 2009, Obama told his advisors he wanted to break the cycle of provocation, extortion, and reward. In practice, that meant refusing to talk to Pyongyang unless it first took serious steps toward denuclearization. His team vowed not to reward bad behavior, escalated sanctions, and insisted that North Korea prove its sincerity before Washington would even sit down. Obama's episodic engagement led to one notable deal, the Leap Day Agreement of February 2012, in which the US promised nutritional aid in exchange for a moratorium on missile launches and nuclear tests. Weeks later, North Korea launched a satellite anyway, and the deal collapsed. Meanwhile, the North torpedoed a South Korean naval vessel, shelled an island, expanded uranium enrichment, and declared itself a nuclear power. Washington responded with more sanctions and stern statements. The pattern repeated: provocation, condemnation, sanctions, no dialogue.
The message we're sending, and when I say we, not simply the United States and the Republic of Korea, but I think the international community, is we are going to break that pattern.
By the end of Obama's second term, North Korea had conducted more nuclear tests and accelerated its missile program. The Arms Control Association notes that strategic patience failed to halt Pyongyang's illicit nuclear and missile activities, and that the onerous preconditions prevented any resumption of negotiations. In fact, Obama's policy gave North Korea time to continue advancing its nuclear and missile programs. Kim's brand new Mercedes had shown that the international sanctions were poorly enforced. Obama's approach lacks realistic proposals for engagement, leaving no off-ramp for North Korea to de-escalate. By 2017, US intelligence estimated that North Korea had expanded its stockpile of weapons-usable material, restarted its Yongbyon reactor, and improved missile range and reliability. Another result is the Kim family hates Obama, who knows nothing but condemning the Kimdom and imposing sanctions. It indirectly caused the Otto Warmbier incident, when the innocent American student was held hostage as a bargaining chip. Of course, 2016 was the election year. Kim Jong-un was more than happy to see the donkeys lose in the race, which was a potential overturn of the US-DPRK relationship. This brief detour matters because it shows why Trump's gambit, inviting Kim to talk without preconditions, struck many Americans as refreshing rather than reckless. After 8 years of politely ignoring Pyongyang while it sprinted toward ICBMs, the bar for trying something different was very low. Trump's personal diplomacy may have been unconventional, but at least it wasn't strategic sleepwalking. Obama hoped North Korea would fold if he stared long enough. But Trump decided to pick up the phone and say, "Hey, Rocket Man, let's talk."
Rocket Man should have been handled a long time ago. Little Rocket Man, we're going to do it because we really have no choice. And I want to tell you something, and I'm sure he's listening because he watches every word, and I guarantee you one thing, he's watching us like he never watched anybody before. That I can tell you. That I can tell you.
So, it all started under the blazing Singapore sun in June 2018, when the two leaders met face to face in a spectacle few could have imagined just months prior. Fire and fury had given way to smiles and handshakes. Trump, a real estate mogul turned president, and Kim, a young third-generation dictator, stood as equals on the world stage. The summit, the first ever between a sitting US president and a North Korean leader, broke decades of taboo. Many in Washington's foreign policy establishment were aghast. By merely meeting Kim, critics warned that Trump was indirectly legitimizing the regime. But Trump brushed aside the hawks. In his mind, this was the art of the deal writ large, a personal gambit to solve an intractable crisis his predecessors could not. What followed was a whirlwind of bromance. Over the next year, Trump and Kim met 2 more times, in Hanoi in February 2019, and then at the Korean Demilitarized Zone in June 2019.
I'm now seeing pictures of President Trump certainly moving. These are not old pictures, moving now. We should see Chairman Kim on the other side.
James, let's just quickly just watch the pictures.
Where Trump became the first US president to ever step onto North Korean soil. The two exchanged dozens of letters, overflowing with florid flattery. Trump would later gush to a crowd,
No, really. He wrote me beautiful letters, and they're great letters. We fell in love.
describing Kim in terms one might use for a dear friend. In one private note, Kim addressed Trump as Your Excellency and spoke of deep and special friendship, to which Trump responded in kind. It was an odd coupling, the brash former reality TV star and the reclusive young dictator, yet they revelled in their unlikely chemistry. For a moment, personalist diplomacy eclipsed geopolitics. Trump even fired his hawkish national security advisor John Bolton, reportedly because Bolton wouldn't stop pushing the Libya model, of disarmament that had ended in Muammar Gaddafi's violent overthrow. To keep Kim at the table, Trump was willing to sideline his own hardliners. He bet everything on his gut feeling that his personal touch could transform the standoff.
We fell in love. But you know what? Now they'll say, Donald Trump said they fell in love. How horrible. How horrible is that? So unpresidential.
To an extent, it did change the atmosphere. During this honeymoon period, North Korea paused its nuclear and long-range missile tests, and the spectre of war that loomed in 2017 receded. Trump crowed that his friend Kim would eventually make a deal. But this made-for-TV romance had a fragile script. The Hanoi summit in 2019 collapsed without an agreement. By October that year, working-level talks in Stockholm fell apart in mere hours. Kim, frustrated by the lack of sanctions relief, reverted to testing missiles more in the next year than in the previous decade.
Tonight, the U.S. and Japan are now calling for an emergency meeting of the UN Security Council. It all comes after North Korea launched yet another missile.
According to U.S. intelligence, the medium-range missile, classified as a KN-17, was launched near North Korea's...
The core dispute, North Korea's nukes, remained as intractable as ever. Trump's lover's quarrel with Kim did not produce the denuclearization he had boasted about. Washington's technocrats, whom Trump had bypassed, felt vindicated. By 2020, as Trump left office, US-North Korea relations were back in a deep freeze. The bromance, it seemed, had fizzled.
The powerful sister of North Korea's leader has issued her second statement in 2 days, this time saying that while relations between the US and North Korean leaders are not bad, there won't be any future talks to end the North's nuclear program.
Fast forward to 2025, and here was Trump again, back in power and eager to rekindle the flame. Only now something extraordinary happened. Kim Yo-jong publicly admitted the bromance between his brother and Trump. Coming from Kim Yo-jong, known for her scathing diatribes, the tone was strikingly restrained. Observers noted she didn't use harsh words this time. And even her mention of North Korea's cherished nuclear status was unusually mild. It was as if Pyongyang had momentarily set aside its venom to give a polite nod to Trump's courtship. For the North Korean public, the message was carefully crafted. Our supreme leader can chat and joke with the President of the United States one-on-one as an equal. What higher proof of Kim's stature could there be? By extolling Kim's personal ties with Trump, the regime not only boosted Kim's prestige at home, but also sent a subtle signal abroad. Two political strongmen might really solve some problems. Kim Yo-jong's statement, pointedly titled, US DPRK contact is just the US's hope, came with a big caveat. Yes, she implied personal friendship exists. However, if the US doesn't accept the changed reality and clings to the failed past, any meeting will remain only America's wish. In other words, we acknowledge the bromance, but don't expect another summit unless you get real about who we are now. This was the new wrinkle in the Trump-Kim saga. The shadow of Singapore still loomed, an undeniable personal bond that even Pyongyang couldn't bring itself to deny. However, Kim Yo-jong warned us that this time, love alone won't be enough to carry the day.
오늘의 높은 단상에 오르게 되었습니다.
Donald Trump may be nostalgic for the summer of 2018, but North Korea 2025 is a very different beast from the one that flirted with denuclearization talks back then. Kim Jong-un today cuts a far more confident, even cocky figure, and it's not hard to see why. In the years since the last Trump-Kim meeting, the geopolitical landscape shifted dramatically in Pyongyang's favor. The Ukraine war erupted in 2022, jolting great power dynamics and quite unexpectedly throwing Kim a lifeline. As Russia found itself isolated under sanctions, the Kremlin reached out to fellow pariah states for support, and North Korea eagerly answered the call. Hey, no worries, says North Korea, we have been living under international sanctions for decades. Pyongyang quietly forged an arrangement with Moscow, artillery shells and ammunition from North Korea in exchange for Russian oil, fertilizer and grain.
Russia has approached North Korea to request ammunition. I'm not able to provide any more detail than that at this point in time, but it does demonstrate and is indicative of the situation that Russia finds itself in.
In fact, South Korean intelligence assessed that Pyongyang was trading artillery rounds for up to 700,000 tons of grain and rice, an enormous quantity to fill up to 40% of North Korea's chronic food gap. Russian crude oil, too, found its way into the North's refineries. The crippling bite of international sanctions lessened, at least for the time being, between the two sanctioned economies. Kim got something perhaps even more valuable from the Ukraine conflict: strategic breathing room. The United States under President Biden and then under Trump's early months was preoccupied with Europe's largest war since World War II. The Biden administration poured attention and resources into confronting Russia, meaning less focus on rogue states like North Korea. Kim seized this opportunity. He accelerated missile tests while Washington's gaze was fixed elsewhere. Putin, with one war, basically carried the kingdom on his back.
South Korean intelligence reported that around 12,000 North Korean soldiers were sent to assist Russia. In this footage from January, a Ukrainian investigator is believed to be questioning one of those.
Kim Jong-un now sees himself as negotiating from strength, not desperation. His sister's statement made this crystal clear. Let's remind everyone, it is 2025, not 2018 or 2019. Our irreversible status as a nuclear-armed state and the fundamental changes in the geopolitical environment are indisputable facts that must be acknowledged as a premise for any future talks. In other words, North Korea is done playing the supplicant. It will only engage the US as an equally important nuclear power. Gone are the days when Kim might dangle piecemeal steps toward denuclearization in hopes of sanctions relief. Now the message is, recognize us as we are, as a nuclear nation, or don't bother knocking. North Korean leaders mean that if talks resume, they can only be arms control negotiations, not denuclearization negotiations. Pyongyang is essentially demanding the same treatment the US gives the likes of Pakistan or even Russia. This is a night and day shift from the position of past US administrations, which insisted on North Korea's complete denuclearization. But Trump, characteristically, has muddied the waters. In his exuberance to praise Kim, Trump himself has flirted with recognizing North Korea's nuclear status. On his very first day back in the Oval Office, Trump excitedly reminisced about his beautiful past meetings with Kim and remarked that North Korea is a nuclear nation, a legitimate nuclear-armed country recognized by the world. That bombshell comment was utter heresy in Washington. The New York Times and others blasted Trump for signaling a reversal of decades of US policy. Seoul's defense ministry lodged an immediate protest. But for Kim Jong-un, those words were music to the ears. At last, an American president openly saying what Pyongyang had long demanded to hear, that North Korea's nuke is a fact. Buoyed by such signals, Kim has grown only more hard-nosed and transactional. North Korea's stance now could be summed up as bromance. Sure, we can be friends, if the price is right. As Kim Yo-jong tartly noted, even close brothers keep clear accounts. Pyongyang will not grant Trump a made-for-TV summit just to give him a political trophy. Kim expects payment in kind. What does Kim want? With his Russia-backed lifeline, it's not emergency food or fuel. Those are covered. What North Korea really craves is respect in concrete form. Sanctions relief, security guarantees, and above all, an end to Washington's hostile policy, which in Pyongyang's lexicon means everything from military drills to human rights criticisms. In practical terms, Kim's price for another summit is US acceptance of North Korea's nuclear status and a willingness to strike a deal around that reality. From Trump's perspective, he wanted to play a deal maker, but the situation has changed. The honeymoon was over. In 2018, a few compliments and photo ops could buy a temporary freeze on the nuclear tests, but in 2025, Kim expects hard concessions for a goodwill gesture and real benefits. The days of love letters yielding real geopolitical dividends are over. If Trump wants a grand bargain or even just a splashy summit, he'll likely have to pony up something tangible before Kim even comes to the table. It's a reversal of roles. Now Kim is the coy one. Adding to Kim's leverage is the fact that time seems to be on Pyongyang's side. Every month that passes, North Korea's nuclear arsenal only grows larger and more sophisticated. By 2025, US analysts quietly acknowledge that denuclearization is a lost cause, and containment is the new goal. Prominent think tanks, once staunchly against any nuclear North Korea, have begun floating proposals uncannily similar to Pyongyang's demands. The Quincy Institute, for instance, published a paper urging Washington to stop insisting on denuclearization and shift to a strategy of deterrence and arms control, essentially accepting North Korea as a nuclear power as long as its capabilities are frozen at current levels. This is exactly what Kim wants to hear. Trump's instincts, paradoxically, aligned with this emerging view. Surrounded by advisors now willing to rationalize his gut feelings, Trump might actually consider a deal that formalizes a nuclear-armed North Korea in exchange for a cap on its arsenal. It would be the ultimate art of the personal deal. Controversial, risky, but potentially groundbreaking.
또다시 미국 대통령과 마주 앉을 준비가 되어 있으며 반드시 국제사회가 환영하는 결과를 만들기 위해 노력할 것입니다. 다만 미국이
Kim's new confidence comes with an edge of truculence. He feels he doesn't need Trump the way he might have in 2018. Back then, North Korea's economy was in dire straits. International sanctions had slashed its exports by an estimated 97% between 2016 and 2020, devastating foreign currency earnings. It's no coincidence that Kim eagerly engaged in diplomacy during that crisis, since he badly needed sanctions relief. But now, with Russian and, to some extent, Chinese support buffering the pain, Kim can afford to be choosier. He won't settle for a bad deal, and he can survive without a deal at all for longer than before. Trump, for his part, still appears entranced by the nostalgia of the bromance, perhaps underestimating how Kim's calculus has changed. On the surface, he acts as if a friendly outreach is all it takes. Hence his casual, "How's my buddy Kim?" during trade talks. But behind closed doors, even Trump's team must recognize the new price tag attached to that buddy now. North Korea all but spelled it out. Show us the money or don't expect a hug on camera. Thus, the stage is set for a test of Trump's deal-making mettle. Will he, a man who prides himself on out-negotiating opponents, concede enough to satisfy Kim's steep asking price? Or will the whole notion of a transnational bromance prove oxymoronic, collapsing under clashing expectations? The real question is, how much of a price Trump is willing to pay.
I got along very well. North Korea, Kim Jong-un, I got along very well with him. The press hated when I said that. How could you get along with him? Well, you know, it's nice to get along with somebody who has a lot of nuclear weapons or otherwise, isn't it?
Donald Trump's approach to North Korea has always been deeply personal, impulsive, and iconoclastic. As he embarks on a possible second round of courtship with Kim Jong-un, it's worth examining the method and madness behind his brand of personalist diplomacy. Traditional US statecraft toward rogue states tends to be institutional and principle-driven, with sanctions, multilateral pressure, and formal summits hammered out by legions of aides. Trump tossed that playbook out the window. He has relied on gut instinct and one-on-one rapport, a style that has perplexed experts, but, arguably, opened up new possibilities. Psychologists might say Trump's diplomacy reflects his high dominance, charismatic personality, marked by near pathological self-confidence and impulsiveness. Indeed, a 2020 study diagnosed Trump as having a trust your gut leadership style. He leaps first, worries about details later. This was on full display in the Korea saga. In 2017, when North Korea's missiles and nuclear tests sent tensions soaring, Trump did something no seasoned politician would. He engaged in a nuclear name-calling spat on Twitter, dubbing Kim Little Rocket Man and boasting about the size of his own nuclear button.
But we want nations that cooperate together to create better for all people. That's what we're all about, all people. And we can't have madmen out there shooting rockets all over the place.
The world winced, fearing these two insecure leaders might blunder into war. Yet, by early 2018, Trump had flipped the script entirely, agreeing on the spot to meet Kim after a South Korean envoy relayed a vague offer. It was pure impulse. The US diplomatic corps was caught off guard. Plans were scribbled on the back of napkins, but Trump, the showman, saw an opportunity for a historic breakthrough, and he seized it personally. There's a certain mad genius in this. By breaking all the rules, Trump managed to do what no prior president had: get a North Korean leader to the negotiating table without any preconditions. He proved that flattery and bold gestures could achieve at least the opening act of diplomacy, something years of cautious negotiations had failed to do. Trump himself reveled in proving the experts wrong. The sheer audacity of his approach forced everyone to recalibrate. Even many of Trump's critics begrudgingly admitted that talks were better than war, and Trump had a point that trying something unconventional was better than repeating a failed status quo.
At the Hanoi summit, President Trump reportedly demanded a full dismantling of North Korea's nuclear infrastructure and the transfer of all nuclear weapons and fissile materials to the United States.
Yet Trump's personalist diplomacy also exposed stark contradictions. He made it all about the leaders, sidelining the legions of experienced diplomats and specialists who normally manage such delicate engagements. At the Singapore summit, the joint statement was long on hopeful platitudes and short on specifics. Kim was happy to sign vague promises while pocketing the prestige of the meeting. Indeed, without the boring bureaucrats, Trump had no one to nail down the technical nuts and bolts of a nuclear deal. That was a lot of great theatre, very little actual disarmament. The North Koreans walked away from subsequent working talks, complaining the US had no coherent follow-up plan. What a fair complaint, since Trump's team often struggled to convert his grand gestures into policy detail. One odd outcome of Trump's first-term experiment is that it gave rise to an entire ecosystem of thinkers and officials ready to systematize his instincts. Knowing Trump's disdain for traditional expertise, a cadre of advisors and think tankers set about creating intellectual frameworks for his gut-level ideas. This led to the articulation of an America-first approach to Asia that is radically different from the past. Strategists like Elbridge Colby argue that the US should focus on the real big threat, China, and be prepared to make deals with lesser evil states like North Korea to strengthen the US position in East Asia. In Colby's view, America must prioritize power balances over moralistic crusades. That means if cutting a deal with Kim helps keep China in check or reduces conflict on the Korean peninsula, so be it. This is a stark departure from the old US stance that North Korea's nukes are an unacceptable threat that must be eliminated at all costs. Trump, likely not a reader of white papers, repeatedly suggested that having Kim on our side could be beneficial in the bigger picture. He famously said in 2019, "North Korea has great potential. Think of it, between Russia, China and South Korea, it's in the middle of all of them. It could be an amazing ally."
I think we're going to do very well with North Korea over a period of time. I'm in no rush. The sanctions are on. We got our hostages back. Our remains are coming back. You saw the beautiful ceremony.
That was an eyebrow-raising notion, the idea of peeling North Korea away from China's orbit and maybe even into the US camp. It hasn't happened, of course. But under Trump's second term, one can discern the seeds of a realpolitik bargain. if Kim restrains his nukes and missiles and perhaps distances himself a bit from Beijing, then the US might normalize relations and even economically support North Korea. In essence, treating Kim like treating Vietnam, a former enemy turned neutral partner. In praising Trump's boldness, one has to note he fundamentally changed the discourse on North Korea. He proved that a US president could sit with a North Korean leader without the sky falling. He humanized Kim in the American public eye by portraying him as a quirky partner rather than a comic book villain. This desensitization has persisted. By 2025, Americans are somewhat accustomed to the idea of engaging Kim, something that was politically toxic before. That is a testament to Trump's ability to shatter norms. It took an outsider, a showman with a flair for shock, to break a 70-year pattern of non-engagement.
Given their past behavior, given the belligerent manner in which they are constantly threatening their neighbors, I don't think there's any question that that would be a decent.
There's also the moral contradiction. Trump showered one of the world's most repressive dictators with praise, calling Kim very talented for how he took over his country, even saying, "He's a tough guy. I guess you have to be," regarding Kim's rule by fear.
Executing people. He's a tough guy. Hey, when you take over a country with tough people, and you take it over from your father, I don't care who you are, what you are, how much of an advantage you have. If you can do that at 27 years old, that's 1 in 10,000.
Such comments appalled human rights advocates and many in South Korea, where memories of northern aggression run deep. To some, Trump's bromance was an unforgivable betrayal of values and allies. He gave Kim international legitimacy without extracting any improvement in human rights or reduction in the gulags. Trump, being Trump, did not particularly care to bring up such topics. He famously said at Singapore, when pressed on human rights, he loves his people, a statement that rang hollow against the reality of North Korean prison camps. The satirical undertone of all this was not lost on observers. An American president who wrapped himself in the flag of patriotism ended up lavishing love on a communist tyrant, all in the name of his personal diplomacy. It's a rich irony that history will note.
Despite North Korea's threat of a new strategic weapon, the U.S. is hopeful Pyongyang will live up to its promises to denuclearize. President Donald Trump believes the regime's leader is a man of his word. Kim Jae tells us more.
Seeing from a vantage point, history may also give Trump some credit. By 2025, even as North Korea's arsenal grows, the possibility of war has remained distant. One could argue that Trump's engagement helped set a precedent for dialogue that cooled tensions. Kim Jong-un, who in 2017 might have truly feared US military action, now arguably feels that as long as Trump is in charge, there's a chance for a deal that lets him keep his nukes. That might actually dissuade Kim from rash provocations. The strange trust Trump built, the fact that Kim Yo-jong now acknowledges their personal friendship, suggests that Pyongyang, despite its bluster, does not see Trump as an implacable enemy. That, in turn, can be a foundation for sustained peace. In international relations, personal chemistry can be a strategic asset, albeit one hard to quantify. As Trump navigates this second act, armed with both the advantages of his unique approach and the lessons of its failures, the world is watching with a mix of hope and dread. Will Trump's art of the deal succeed in crafting an unprecedented compromise? One that trading some US concessions for a cap on North Korea's nukes and a peaceful coexistence? Such a deal could transform Northeast Asia and be touted as a diplomatic masterstroke. Or will the whole enterprise collapse under irreconcilable differences, leaving us with nothing but memories of a bizarre love affair and a North Korea more dangerous than ever? Trump himself remains characteristically upbeat. He believes in the power of the handshake, the candid chat, the bromantic bond. In his mind, deals are made between men, not via stupid wars or endless meetings. It is diplomacy as a mano-a-mano business, stripped of pretense. this approach is as risky as it is bold, part genius, part folly.
He's a troll. The President of the United States is a Twitter troll.
And that, dear viewers, is how a real estate mogul and a hereditary dictator invented the strangest bromance of the 21st century. From love letters and walkabouts to tariffs and test launches, the saga of Donald and Kim has been part negotiation, part performance art. If you enjoyed untangling this geopolitical soap opera with us, don't let the story stop here. Hit that subscribe button and ring the bell to stay ahead of the next twist.